Hot takes. We're doing some hot takes today. Hello, welcome to another video. We're doing some hot takes here on Warcaster. I asked you guys to leave your D&D hot takes, and I'm going to be reacting to them. Alright, so first things first, I'm going to go over, because they get first dibs, I'm going over to my Patreon page. Did you know I have a Patreon? Patreon.com/Warcaster. Put a post up over there, so I'm going to get their hot takes first, because they're the most important people. I think the Game Master should be there for the entertainment of the player. She should always make sure that every player has a moment to shine. She has to be aware of their strengths, their flaws, their wishes, and pet peeves. She serves the story and the players. Yeah, kind of. Yeah, mostly. I agree, yeah, the DM is like, they're a host at a party. Their goal is to make sure that everyone else is having fun. On the flip side of that, the DM should also be having fun. If the DM is not having fun by making sure that everyone else is having fun, then they should not do that. Your fun should come from giving all the other players fun. If you don't find that fun, then maybe don't be a DM. That's kind of the point of the DM. The DM is also a player. It's important to remember that sometimes, because the DM can put in a ton of time into prep work for sessions. I should know I spend way too long prepping. But the amount of time that they put in, the players should reciprocate with being into the story and getting engaged and playing along and stuff like that. But also, if they're having fun, then the DM should also be having fun, because that time and that prep work should be part of the fun of being a DM. And if you don't enjoy that, then maybe being a DM isn't for you. Encumbrance rules and bag capacity limits should be rigidly enforced. No! You're wrong! No! Bad! That's the way you want to play, that's the way you want to play. A lot of these answers, by the way, can probably come down to, well, it depends what kind of game you're playing, but I'm not going to say that for every single question, so I'll just have my take in response to it. No, I hate encumbrance rules and bag size limits. Yeah, you should be aware of it. You can't just be like, I have 20 long swords. It's like, well, how you carrying all of those? That makes sense. Rigidly enforced? Nah. Definitely be a little bit flexible with it. I don't do coin weight because that's like, you want to do more math on top of all the math you've got in your game? I don't like doing all the... One of the things that annoys me about D&D, there's not very many things that do, but one of the things that sometimes can bog stuff down is in the middle of combat, you're like, wait, I need to do D20 plus my modifier, cool, got that. My damage is 2d6, I've got this smite on it, which is going to be an extra 2d8, plus I've got like sneak attack on it, which is an extra 3d6, and then I've got, I've got a d4 from this, I can use my bardic inspiration, that's a d10 on it, and you're like, math, and when you're under pressure, that's a lot of things to calculate. I don't like having more math on top of my math. I like to keep math to a minimum in my D&D, because I prefer the roleplay side of things. So I like to keep the math simple, and I like to keep the story a little bit flexible. It's the way I tell my D&D stories as a whole, is keeping things very flexible. I like the rule of cool, just like, you know, being flexible with basically everything. I'd never, very, very rarely, rigidly enforce anything in D&D, and encumbrance is no exception. GMs should occasionally present players with unwinnable situations, because they need to learn to run sometimes. No, not unwinnable, no. I'm with you, I get your point, I get your idea. I don't think you should present them with an unwinnable situation. I think you should present them with a challenge that could be very difficult to overcome. There still should be a way that they can overcome this problem. There still should be a way for them to win. If they get lucky, or they have very good strategy, or whatever it may be, there must be a way for them to overcome your problem. I think putting them in a very difficult situation and them coming to the realization that, hey, we're not strong enough for this, we need to run, is a very good thing for your game and keeps things fresh and keeps things like you have the threat of danger still in your combats and things like that. Definitely, I totally agree with you on that front, but I don't think you should make something so absolute as to say, you cannot win this, you must run. If they're very smart, you should reward your players for being very smart instead of being like, that was really cool, it had no effect. You're still in exactly the same situation, because what's the point of trying at that point? Alright, I'm going over to the YouTube community tab now. I got a whole 1 response over there, so do keep your eyes on that more often, because if I'm going to be doing more hot take videos, which I plan on doing, then keep an eye on the community tab, because that will be hopefully where I get the most of my hot takes in the future. So many classes and races have dark vision, it is barely a benefit and not special enough. Yes, big agree. It is to the point where when you have, it's rare that you have a party that doesn't have at least one member with dark vision, and when you have that kind of capability within your party, especially if you've got multiple members with dark vision, it gets to a point where the DM simply just goes like, okay, well, you know, the majority of you have dark visions, you can help guide the others to get through this dark bit. And there's no challenge for the people that don't have dark vision, because they're fine. You breeze over it with all the other people that make up for it with their dark vision. So I think maybe in like combat situations, like it's pitch black in here, you can't see, you're the only one who doesn't have dark vision, you can't see, you might have disadvantage on your attack rolls or whatever. I don't feel that's enough. Dark vision should be a very special thing that people covet, and it's a really handy ability that comes in, like, you know, rogues having thieves tools and proficiency with it and stuff like that. They're the lockpicks, that's the thing that they do. But dark vision is a thing that, like, everyone can do. And you have spells for dark vision, and you have magic items with dark vision, and you have loads of stuff that gives you dark vision. It's just like, you get dark vision, you get dark vision, everybody gets dark vision. And it does somewhat cheapen it. Alright, and now we go to Twitter. This might not be a hot take, I'm not really sure, but DMs who will bend the rules a bit occasionally for storytelling purposes, or just to make things more enjoyable, are better. IMO. What? No. No. Bending the rules? That can't happen indeed. Yeah. Definitely. Definitely do that. If you're so strict with the rules, don't do that. Change him. It's much better. 5e needs a rework of Drow as a player race, especially the fact they don't get Undercommon as a language. Maybe. I'm gonna look into some Drow right now, and I'll get back to you on that one, because I don't actually know enough about Drow as a playable race. Drow, player, race. Let's find out together, shall we? So they've got normal speed, superior dark vision. Hey, more dark vision! 120 feet, that makes sense. Proficiency in perception, that makes sense. Fey ancestry, makes sense. Trance, makes sense. Sunlight sensitivity, does make sense. Really inconvenient if you're playing as a Drow, but yeah, it makes sense. Drow magic, I know the dancing lights cantrip? Why? Why would you want light? That's the opposite of what you want. When you reach 3rd level, you can cast a fairy fire spell. Huh? When you reach 5th level, you can cast Darkness. That one makes sense. Darkness makes a lot of sense. Proficiency with rapiers, short sword, and hands, crossbows. This is a whole other point here. Proficiency with rapiers, short swords, and hand crossbows. Why? Because you're a Drow? Like, no. That's entirely dependent on your backstory. You're a Drow that grew up in some human civilization. You won't have the Drow weapon training that it says you have. You wouldn't have proficiency in those things. I think that as a racial trait is dumb. You can speak, read, and write Common and Elvish. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, they should probably have Undercommon. Yeah, I can buy that. Alignment. Drow are evil in capitals. I love it. To the point that your character has to be an exception of some kind. Oh my god, okay. That's hilarious. You'll need to come up with a reason why your Drow character had a change of heart or was expelled by Drow society. So they get the Drow weapon training. Oh my god, that's hilarious. Just the site I'm on, I think, is just skullsplitterdice.com. You need some reason for your character to be adventuring alongside the party in a dungeon rather than being a monster in one. Man, that's funny. Hey, we're just gonna make this assumption about Drow, by the way. See, this is the thing. Drow are evil, as a general rule, but in your world, Drow could be the good guys. You don't have to pay attention to this. Drow are evil. Drow are evil to who? Homebrew to your heart's content, everyone. Not sure how hot this is, but honestly, a DM fudging rolls for story's sake is almost mandatory at points. Ooh. I don't know if I agree with that one. Mandatory? No. I can see why people would do it. I can see why DMs would fudge rolls. I don't think it's ever mandatory to fudge rolls. And it depends what story you want to tell. Because if you're saying that the DM's story is the most important, so you must fudge the rolls to continue the DM's story, then you're missing the point. Because the point is, it's the player's story, not the DM's. And also, I feel like if you're fudging rolls, then you shouldn't, because the DM is only fudging rolls to fit what they want to happen, rather than what the players have made happen. And if you want to have it so it's like, it's a big boss battle and we need the people to have an epic battle and it's just not happening. It's a bit of a wet fart and no one's enjoying themselves because it's like, oh, this is really anticlimactic. I understand why you would want to fudge rolls in that scenario. However, I feel like there can be a story that can be made out of it. You just have to be creative with your DM mind and think, well, why would this happen? What can I come up with on the fly to still make this interesting? Why are they trouncing this big bad so hard? Maybe this isn't the real big bad. Maybe there's another one. If you open a bag of holding underwater and all your scrolls, etc. get wet or destroyed, don't blame the DM because you don't understand basic physics. Yeah, don't open a bag of holding underwater. Do you know what's underwater? Water. It's wet under there. Hot take, the kids outside are really loud! There should be more than one DM. I think it's unfair that the DM has to essentially play hundreds of different characters as well as come up with a story. Also, I feel like this meme is what will happen with every DM at some point. You know what? F*** you. The Xenosiths show up. The what? Okay. Let's unpack here. Should there be more than one DM? No. I don't think so. Me personally, I love being a DM. I love creating a story, I love doing the characters, I love influencing what the guys do, and then they bounce off my ideas and give it back, and then I make a new story path out of what they've done. That's the fun of DMing. I really enjoy all that stuff. And if you don't think it's fair that one person has to come up with hundreds of characters in a story and stuff, then, you know, plane's going overhead. Sorry about the noise. That's part of being a DM, right? That's the fun of it. That's where I enjoy doing all that stuff. So I wouldn't want to hand that off to someone else. I wouldn't want to have someone help me come up with stuff for the game that I'm co-running because I want to do all that stuff. The class trait that druids will not wear metal armor is dumb and limiting, and there's no reason for it. Yeah, I get the idea behind it. I understand why they've said that. However, yeah, will not is very limiting. You could say like a majority don't, or you know, it's more common for druids to not. I understand that, I get it, and I get they're supposed to be very nature-based and they don't use like man-made stuff and it's all natural and stuff like that. Cool, but that's not the only type of druid. You can play your druid however you want to play it, and limiting them and being like, you cannot wear metal armor is like, well, but why though? Overplanning your character is inherently bad and leads to either disappointment or clashes with the DM/other players. Overplanning your character. Ooh, that's a hard one because it depends what you mean by overplanning, because I think that's open to interpretation, because for some DMs, overplanning would be, man, they have a page of backstory. This is like a one-shot. Like, I was expecting them to have maybe a few lines. Whereas some people will be like, you've only got a page on your backstory? I'm expecting 3. And it depends what you mean by it, because if you're planning the entire history of your character, I don't think that's inherently a bad thing. If you work with your DM to fill in the blanks, or you say, here's what I've got, here's 5 pages of my backstory, let me know what you think. And the DM reads it and goes, this bit makes sense, this bit doesn't. We should maybe tweak this bit, make it fit with the world a little bit more, this bit doesn't quite work, and they work together and come up with something. I don't think that's inherently bad. If you just say, here's my 10-page backstory, all of this is canon, there you go, and the DM can go, none of this really fits, then yeah, totally agree with you. But I think it's hard to rate this take because I don't know what you mean by over-planning. I don't know the limit of what you mean by over-planning, because I think it's subjective. Critical hits just doing extra damage is boring, and magic items and abilities that just increase that damage is even less inspired. The stunt system in the Aegis games is far superior. I don't know the stunt system in the Aegis games, so can't comment on that bit, but critical hits just doing extra damage? I I get your point, but I think it's a very easy catch-all. But it's very relatable for people who've played video games or any other type of media in the world will understand a critical hit is something that does more damage. That's just inherently what the term critical hit is associated with from games and movies and everything else, right? Critical hit means more damage. I get what you mean, maybe they should have some sort of other effects. It's like, oh, you get a crit on this creature and now they fall prone kind of thing. Like you can have extra effects associated with it. I don't hate more damage. I think, especially if you do something like you score a critical hit and the DM goes, okay, describe your critical hit on this creature, and you give the player a chance to roleplay out and describe this awesome move that they do in order to get more damage and stuff like that, then yeah, I think that's fine. But if you want to add some extra spice to it, you can say, okay, you get this advantage out of it. They fall prone, or you get advantage on your next strike, or you make them drop their weapon, or, you know, stuff like that. The only issue I can see with that, though, is that that's also influencing other abilities, because there's other abilities that do those same things, you know? And you don't want to encroach on that territory, because it makes that ability seem much less special if you can do the same thing by scoring a crit. A DM's job is to craft an ever-evolving world, and like wrestling, card is subject to change. Star Wars Edge of the Empire does a great job emphasizing that events should be a co-op experience made by the players, not rigid missions you find in a bulletin board. Never outright say no as a DM. Reward their creativity with statements like yes, but, and add a small setback like D4 disadvantage to a roll. More importantly, encourage creativity. Example given in EOTE. Do I know anybody on this planet? Respond with, I don't know. Do you? I understand the intent behind this. I somewhat agree with you. I don't think it's a hard and fast rule to never say no. There are times when, as a DM, you should say no. But if the whole point of like a story arc you've got is this heist mission that you've been building up to for ages, and someone just comes in the middle of the session and goes, I'm gonna go out on the street and I'm just gonna start shouting for no reason, DM can just be like, no, because that's just going to impact everyone's fun. Everyone else in the party is like super into this whole thing, and they got the stealth on, and they got all this epic heist that they've planned out, and they're doing their plans, and everything's going smoothly, and then someone just goes, I'm going to ruin these plans for no reason. The DM can just go like, no. Matt Colville has an excellent video about saying no as a DM, and he was saying like one of his players that he was playing with when they were creating a character wanted to play a specific type of character. I forget what it is off the top of my head. And he just said, no, because I know the reason you want to be this character, and that doesn't fit with the lore of my world. So no, you can't do that. And that's fine. You can say no to people sometimes. But I agree with you. Encourage creativity. Don't just say no because you're the DM and you don't want it to happen. Say no, you have to have a good reason for saying no. Make them roll for it if it's something stupid. Like I had, what was it? People tried to rip off the arm of this creature that they just killed, and I was like, with your bare hands? You can try. Made them make a strength check. The DC is super duper high because you're literally trying to rip the arm off a creature with your hands, and you're not even like a barbarian or a strong character. You're just a dude. Super high DC. Made them try though. So you can still encourage them to do stuff. But yeah, I don't think it's a hard and fast rule that you should never say no. But yes, encourage creativity. And to a degree, like, if you show up somewhere, like the example that you give, do I know anyone on this planet? I don't know, do you? Works in some contexts. If you stumble upon a completely new civilization gone for thousands of years that you've just uncovered, that's just been rediscovered after thousands of years, and there's like nobody there, everyone is dead, and someone goes, is there a market here? You can't just be like, I don't know. Is there? It's like, no, there isn't. D&D is only as good and well loved as it is because of the vast homebrewing culture around it. And if there was less of that, the game wouldn't be nearly as enjoyable. The players make it fun, not Wizards of the Coast. The players make it fun, not Wizards of the Coast. But it is Wizards of the Coast that make it. And Wizards do say, homebrew to your heart's content. Like they always say, all of these things are guidelines. Like just take all of this with a pinch of salt and change what you want to change, right? So I think it's a bit harsh to say, Wizards don't make it fun. The players do, because they're the ones that give us the tools to make it our own games and make it fun. It's a symbiotic relationship between players and Wizards of the Coast. It's not like this is what Wizards say you should do, and everyone's going against the rules, and they're rebelling against what Wizards say we should do, and we're making the game better. Like, it's not that. Wizards tell us to do that, and we do that, and we make it fun. I don't know how hot of a take this is, but 3.5 is better than 5th. I don't know, I've only played 5th. Critical Role is not an accurate representation of what everyone's D&D game should be, and people should stop trying to make it like that. Yes! Yes, yes, yes. I love Critical Role. I adore Critical Role. It has made me cry so many times. Critical Role is what I would consider one of the best forms of D&D. I aspire to make my games sort of like that, but not like that at the same time. Everyone's table is different. I enjoy their style of heavy story, heavy roleplay, all of the characters having intricate backstories, those backstories factoring into story arcs and, a well fleshed out homebrew world and things like that. There are aspects of Critical Role that I like to take and make my own. But you shouldn't expect Critical Role when you sit down to play D&D for the first time. That is it's an entire company. It's a whole production thing that they've got going on. It is the highest form with the highest budget of D&D, ever. You can't expect that at your table. More likely what you're going to have at your table is everyone on their tablets being like, oh god, what am I on? D&D Beyond? Help. Where's my stats again? What's an action? Your games won't be like Critical Role, they'll be better because they're the style that you want to play at your table. If that happens to be exactly like Critical Role, then it happens to be exactly like Critical Role, but you shouldn't aspire to try and make it like that if that's not the style that fits you. Eldritch Blast is overpowered. Disagree. Warlocks really need a good cantrip, and Eldritch Blast is a very good cantrip. D&D can be anything and anywhere. Monarchical medieval settings are done maybe too much. Yeah, kinda. I agree with you. However, I think if you want to do different settings, I think there are other role-playing games that do that better, that will have more defined set of rules for the type of game that you want to play, whether it be, I want to do a sci-fi thing, or I want to do a western, or whatever it may be, right? You're going to have different role-playing games for those settings with more kind of guidelines and rules for those settings. Whereas I think D&D is very kind of high fantasy, medieval type stuff, and that's what D&D does best. So I think you can do other settings within D&D's rule set, but I think there are probably better role-playing games for other scenarios out there. Charm Person won't make anyone sleep with you if they weren't already going to. The spell doesn't work like that. Yeah. God, I hate bard memes. Saving your players from making stupid decisions with a warning before they do it is completely fine. If your players ignore it and continue, then you let them deal with the consequences. Yep, 100%. And you don't have to make the warning overt. You don't have to be like, hey guys, if you do this, everyone will die. Do you want to carry on? Because they're obviously not going to, but you can make it either through NPCs that they're talking to or through visual warning signs or whatever it may be. Paint them a picture of the decision they're going to make. Paint them a picture of the danger they're getting into by entering this cave, or paint them a picture of what the consequences will be if they decide to side with a certain NPC. If they've got a choice between two sides of a conflict and they choose one particular side, let them know the consequences of what's going to happen. Maybe not everything, but paint them a picture, give them an idea of what's going to happen if they decide to make that choice. Because the last thing you want is your players to be blindsided by a choice and get, well, we had no idea that was going to happen. If you paint them a picture and then they decide to still make a stupid choice, that's their fault. A perfect example of that happened in my campaign, where pretty early on I gave my party a bag of beans. I have a story video about the beans. You can watch that. There's probably an eye on the screen up here. I think I'm pointing the right way. If I'm not, I'll flip the video. Bag of beans. One of the things, lots of terrible things can happen, especially for a low-level party. They were a low-level party. When I gave them that item, I said over the table, I was like, just so you guys know, this item is incredibly dangerous. If you want to try and use it, I would exercise a heavy amount of caution because bad stuff can happen. I reminded them that they planted 3 beans, I think, before the bad thing happened, and every time they planted a bean, I was like, just so you guys know, you got quite lucky with this one. Some really bad stuff can happen if you continue to keep planting beans. They kept planting beans, and 2 PCs died because of it. Not my fault. I gave you loads of warnings, you kept planting beans, you planted a treant, you died. Soz, mate. Dwarves are better than elves, always have been. They're 2 different races. No one race is better than another race. They're all racist. You racist! Using counterspell on a healing spell should be normalized. Yes, I agree. Look, maybe in the right scenario, like if you're facing a big villain or a big bad or whatever, they're gonna do everything they can, and they're gonna be super smart about it to make sure that you can't win, right? And winning involves healing your teammates. They can cut off your source of healing and just be like, no, you can't do that anymore. Even worse than a healing spell is counterspelling Revivify. Ooh, that'd be bad, right? Villains would totally do that. If you're DMing and a player is asking to do some crazy and fun shit, don't groan and take the joy out of someone having fun with an RPG. Let me pull the arm off one enemy and fling it at another. Let me seduce the dragon. Let me become friends with the devil. Yes and no. Again, there's times and places to say no in D&D, but highly encourage creativity. If people want to do some wacky stuff, like I mentioned earlier, someone wanted to rip the arm of a creature they just killed, and I was like, with your bare hands? Yeah, you can try. You'd have to roll very, very high for it, but yeah, you can try. Depends what kind of game you're playing. If you want to have the wacky stuff, then have the wacky stuff in your game. But this is how I play it. This is how I play. You got to keep a level of the tone consistent. If you're having a stupid comedy battle where you're against a bunch of people that are clearly inferior to you, have some fun with it. Be like, hey, I'm going to pick this guy up by the scruff of the neck and slam him into the ground and stomp on his face. Like, yeah, sure, why the hell not? If you're having a very serious big boss battle, maybe don't do that. Killing PCs isn't easy enough. 3 turns of combat to get the opportunity to be healed is too lenient. The death saving throw concept needs to be reworked to make dying a more urgent threat. Yes and no, once again. Killing PCs isn't easy enough. Change your tactics. It can be very easy if you know what you're doing. But also you don't want to, just make it so overt that you're going to die and there's nothing you can do about it. You do want to give them the opportunity to intervene. I don't think it should take 3 turns of combat, because if you're smart about it, you can kill them a lot sooner than that. Any sort of damage they take while they're unconscious loses them a death saving throw. If you've got 1 creature against them, sure, that might take 3 turns of combat, but it shouldn't, because a lot of things get multi-attack, and if you've got 1 creature that everyone's fighting, they should get multiple actions, or at least a big multi-attack for each turn, because action economy and all that. Or you have multiple creatures that they're facing, and each of those creatures comes in with a melee attack, boom, 2 death saves, boom, you're dead. That's it. I think death saving throws are perfectly fine. Warlocks are the best spellcasters. Ooh, disagree. Wizards are. Wizards are the best spellcasters. They get the most spells, they're the most powerful. Yep. Warlocks are the most fun? Maybe I can be on board. Objectively the best? Wizards. High-level D&D, 16 to 20, is not fun for players or DM. It's definitely not fun for the DM from stories I've heard. Maybe you enjoy that kind of chaos if you're the DM. Personally, I don't rate it. I've never truly experienced high-level D&D, so I can't fully comment on that. But from what I hear, it's not great. And also, yeah, not fun for the players, I disagree. If your players enjoy just being superheroes and gods and just murdering everything and changing the reality of the world, I'm sure they'll have fun. PHB Rangers are bad. Tasha's did some help, but PHB or PHB plus Xanathar Rangers are bad. A good Ranger is just a fighter with Magic Adept or Druid levels. Yeah, that's not a hot take, is it? Rangers were bad and then they got really good in Tasha's. Really like them now. Lasting effects should be placed on players who hit 0 HP or die and need resurrection. Yes, sort of. Lasting effects, yes. For people who die, 100%. 100%. For people who die and get resurrected, you should absolutely have consequences for being resurrected. Whether that's, on certain spells you have like the -4 to like everything until you can long rest it off for like 4 days afterwards. Injury tables, yes, you shouldn't be able to have magic it goes the same for like dropping to 0 HP as well. You shouldn't be able to have magic where you just go, and you're healed, back up to full HP, and you go, I'm fine now. Like, you should have consequences for dying, and yeah, dropping unconscious should be a big deal. Whether that's literally just like emphasize to your players that dropping to 0 HP is a big deal and they roleplay that out, that's also totally fine. But if you want to have more lasting effects, like, hey, you have an injury now and it's going to take you a while to rest it off, or you need to use this resource to get rid of it or whatever, also works. I agree. And that's it. Those are all your hot takes. For now, I'll be doing another one of these later. Leave a comment on this video if you want to get your hot takes in, and I'll go through these ones for the next hot take video, whenever I do it. But yeah, thank you very much for watching, everyone. Appreciate it. Thank you to my Patreon backers who helped make this video possible. You're the best. You can find a link to my Patreon page in the description. You can go check that out. You can have early access to all my videos, get your name in the credits, access to like the blooper reels for my sketch videos and all sorts of stuff like that. Go check out the Patreon page, please. That would be great. Also, if you liked this video, then make sure to leave a like, because that's the name of the thing. You do a like because you like the video. Also, share it with people who think you might like it. I'm plugging a lot of things, I promise. This is just very YouTube of me. Also, you can subscribe and enable notifications. Press the bell, because then you get notified when future videos go up, and everyone will be really, really happy about it, I promise. Whew. I'm gonna go make some more videos now. Thanks for your hot takes. Bye.